It is a really big pleasure for us to be able to introduce the 6.0 in Director product update today. So without further ado, let's jump into it, shall we? So we will be introducing a update to the core product, as well as a couple of new concepts and complementary product features. So the core product includes a new concept called static enrichment. We have a new enrichment framework in general. We're introducing policy-based routing, and we will be able to do snapshots, rollbacks, and software-defined disk management. I'll get into the details of what that is later on. Also in today's session, we will be covering the management fabric, our new LogPoint director module, as well as the LogPoint search master. So diving into the features, so the director module is going to be our new centralized management console. We'll be able to offer the ability to do bulk operations. So whereas today, if you need to update something or you need to change something across a lot of your different log points, now you can do it in one point, one click, push this to all of your machines. In addition, it will be using a new API that is implemented on the LogPoint itself to do active monitoring of the state of the environment. So you can actually say, if you have a larger LogPoint environment, you can use the directors to see how is the CPU, how is the memory, how's the disk actually doing. Everything in terms of configuration can be done from the director, and software updates as well. The other big new thing we're introducing is the LogPoint search master. So the way you need to think about this is the moment you have more than one search head or more than one backend that runs different dashboards, you would most likely benefit from implementing search master. So where is it useful? If you're an MSSP, if you're a big organization with different divisions or different departments that shouldn't view each other's data, but you sit and you're responsible for managing analytics across these different systems, well, the search master can help you out. So you can actually manage the searches across all of the different searches centrally. You can deploy dashboards, alerts, and reports to either your customers or to your different departments. And you can operate and manage the incidents that are raised decentrally. And you'll be able to do searches all the way through the distributed search heads. So this is going to be, you can think of this as a clustering of analytics, or a way to connect multiple search heads to a single point of management. So how do we enable the director and the search master to actually communicate with a really big distributed LogPoint environment with a lot of different systems with different security domains and these kinds of things? Well, that happens through the management fabric. The management fabric is a clustered configuration and management backend, and it sounds really, salesy and marketing-y, but it truly is. So we have built a fault-tolerant configuration management architecture with APIs, with Hadoop for storing software updates, so it can tolerate breakdowns. It has the use of Kerberos and other very advanced authentication mechanisms to make sure that even though something might go wrong on one part of the environment, it won't go wrong on the other part of the environment. High fault tolerances, everything is replicated. It's a really, really powerful and enterprise-ready piece of core infrastructure to support what we're doing with the search master and director. And for many of our larger customers, the final point on the management fabric is probably going to be the most important one. Today, You cannot use an API to create new devices, to change the configuration and these kinds of things. The management fabric will expose a public API for automation and orchestration. So if you run a if you run a private cloud and you provision new devices and you create them and delete them again at a high frequency, and it's a pain to do that manually, now there is an API to do that. So there's an improved enrichment system. It allows you, this is going way deep into the product itself, it allows us to store enriched data directly in the index. Think of this as really useful for something where you need to only enrich once and search for it a lot of times. Now we can search for the enriched data directly in the data store. The enrichment data is going to be dynamically replicated around all of the different log points. This is necessary to do because we now do enrichment at the collection time. So every place where you might have a normalization and a collection of data, you need to be able to have the enrichment data there. You don't want to go out and configure your enrichment sources on every single log point. They will dynamically replicate. Lookups and enrichments are also being consolidated in the new enrichment system, making it easier to do. The final big thing here is the updated file system. So it will give us an improved performance. We will have an improved resiliency when it comes to our disk system, since it's based on software-defined RAID. We will get a better I/O because the file system itself provides compression. So we will read compressed data instead of raw data. We will take the compression out of user land, put it into the kernel. It's much faster. The file system also supports snapshots, similar to what you might be familiar with from VMware, that allows you to do rollbacks of any type of change that has happened on the system, including an update of the operating system. So these capabilities are going to be helping us taking LogPoint to the next step in terms of being truly enterprise ready and truly ready for big deployments. So what I'm going to be doing now for the next couple of slides is basically going through how does static enrichment work, how does policy-based routing work, and how can we use it in different scenarios. If there's any questions, please raise them in the, you have some controls here on Zoom, and I'll be happy to address that as we go along. So static enrichment, you have your log coming in, and before we store the data, we push the log through an enrichment engine. It can take your existing sources from today, so SQL servers, Active Directory, and also the threat intelligence application we've released, and you can enrich data, your logs, so the output will be the key value pair, the raw logs, as well as the enriched data. All of that will be stored in the repository. So it means that if you need to search for something that is enriched, you don't need to do the enrichment at the query time, drastically reducing the performance needed. But also there is the temporal sensitivity. And what does that mean? Well, the world is changing, right? And some information change fast. So if you have a bus that is Route 9 and it has a certain license plate, well, that bus might be on Route 10 tomorrow, but Route 9 today. So we need to be able to correlate the actual route the bus was on a particular date to correlate this together. It could be DHCP lease, it could be DNS information, it could be a particular OU membership at a given date for a user. So besides from the performance aspect, this allows us to say this is the context we have right now about a given key value pair. We need to store that alongside the log for analysis. Okay, so we have something called processing policy as well. So the ability here is to say we can now do a mapping of a source to a repository. That's possible today, but we can't segregate multiple sources from repositories. So what we do with the new processing policy is basically saying from the same device, there could be either financial data, it could be GDPR sensitive data that needs to go to a particular repository, and other logs needs to go to its ordinary repository. This was possible in 5.6. I think many of you might not even have seen it in 5.6, but we're actually extending that feature now. So that means that for now, we can also start to discard irrelevant messages. It could be firewall denies. Maybe we don't want those. It could be particular Windows event logs. So we know that some Windows events are noisy and always irrelevant. We can discard them at the collection time so they won't reach the repo. Also, the processing policy allows us to say we do not want to store the raw message, we only want to store the key value pair. Now, if you know that your objective with the SIM is not to do forensics, but it is to do analytics on key value pairs to find stuff and to be able to act on certain incidents, you can drastically reduce the disk space and the indexing processing that's required by discarding the raw messages from some of your logs. And remember, this is only for some of them. It doesn't have to be from all of them. So it's, again, it helps you tune and optimize the way you actually spend your hardware resources, being CPU or disk or both. So the processing policy engine is doing filtering, so it can store everything, only the key value pairs, or dropping the message. After it has decided what to do, it will then make a decision based on routing characteristics where it should go. So it can go to a specific protected repo, it can go to a ordinary repo, or we can actually route it out into dev null. Static enrichment is done before policy-based routing. So why is this interesting? Well, it means that now I can take my data, enrich it with extra data, and make the routing decision on data that was not in the original message, but is enriched. So an example of this, let's see, could be that we have two clients. They run on a shared firewall towards the internet. The firewall data comes in, we enrich it with the client database so we know the IP mapping. So these IP addresses belong to client number 1. These IP addresses relate to client number 2. We enrich with the customer name in the message. We then provide that to the routing policy, segregating data to different repositories that could even be mounted on different disks to provide different retention periods, provide different segregation of data, and so on and so forth. So the combination of enrichment and routing provides a very powerful feature for managing your data flows in a way that is simply not possible in previous versions of LogPoint. Another example could be that we can have certain events that needs to be acted on from certain platforms. So enriching the data with TI information, so threat indicators, can, based on that, we can route messages to repositories that have more advanced correlation rules running, more advanced alerting notifications running. So we can actually make sure that we route important messages or known bad messages to a repository where we will act upon the data in a more speedy fashion. So taking a step back, how do we work with the director fabric and our all of the new concepts. So in previous versions, LogPoint offers what we call tenants. We still have a true multi-tenancy capability, but the phrasing is changing a little bit. So for a division or a department in a company, a large company, or for a particular customer in a shared environment, that LogPoint deployment will now be called a LogPoint pool. A LogPoint pool is a completely independent installation with LogPoint servers running on virtualized or physical hardware. They're all connected to the Fabric infrastructure that provides licensing management centrally, updates centrally, configurations centrally, as well as authentication. So what does this mean when we talk about licensing? Well, in the moment you Fabric enable your LogPoint installation, your LogPoint pool, then the only license that exists in the LogPoint pool will be a Fabric enablement. Every other license management will actually be implemented through the management fabric. You don't have, today you need to deploy a license on each machine, and you need to make sure that you have nodes available for each of the different machines. All of that is managed from the fabric today. So you have one floating license that floats across all of your different machines, making license management much easier. So as a user now, if you sit in a large internal security operations team or you're in an MSSP, you can go to two new modes, either the Search Master or the Director Console. The Search Master allows you to do analytics across all of the different pools, and access to the Director Console will allow you to do updates, configurations, license management, health overview, etc. The small dashboard you have down in the left-hand side of the slide here is a screenshot from the new Director Console that provides an overview of the health. How is it going? How much data is being processed? Do we have any notifications we need to act on? And we can also use that UI for doing the configurations. So the new disk system is based on CFS or ZFS. It provides all of the different capabilities we've talked about previously. One thing that for me is really interesting is that it's agnostic to the underlying hardware. We don't care about the RAID controller. We can now create volumes that go cross RAID controller. We can actually take disks out of one machine and put them into another machine, and they will still work. We can also monitor and manage the disk system directly from software without having to be reliant on a given RAID controller's management software on how that works. So we're lifting all of that out of third-party software and just doing it directly on the file system. Of course, once you connect a remote storage like a SAN or a NAS, then these file systems will be used. We will compress the data just like we do today and ship a big compressed zip file of each day or something like that to the remote mount point. So everything that works today will also work in the new version. I know some of you are probably thinking right now, okay, this is ZFS, and this is for both the operating system and our log repositories. What happens if I just do a patch update from 5.6 to 6.0? How will they update the file system? The short answer is, of course, I don't believe anyone in computer science has solved that problem yet. So if you update your existing solution, you will still run on the old software. Everything we've talked about today is possible, but you will not be able to use the features provided by the new disk system. So that's just important to note. The director and fabric roles. So what is it? There is a fabric enabled LogPoint. That's a regular LogPoint that has been provided with the director license. There is a LogPoint pool that is just a group of fabric enabled LogPoints that work together. There is something called a fabric server. This is the coordinating service for all the fabric enabled LogPoints, and this is the place where we control all of the information needed for the director setup. The search master we've talked about. The API server is actually a different role that you can disconnect and place in a different security zone that can be used to handle all of the configuration requests that goes in and out of the director infrastructure if you need to do orchestration. And ultimately, at the end, we have the director console that I showed you a screenshot of before, where you can manage the configurations in your director setup. So there is a couple of new concepts that we need to be aware of when we deal with this. If you install 6.0, you don't need to do any of this. You probably want to do this if you have a LogPoint deployment that is larger than 2 or 3 LogPoint servers. This will be a benefit for you. These systems and these servers run in VMware. They don't require a lot of performance. It's not something that is resource intensive, but they need to be there. So you're probably saying, okay, if I need to deploy something, how much do I need to deploy? Well, the search master is optional. If you need one, well, you can deploy one. You need your existing LogPoint environment. You need your fabric servers. You need either 3, 5, or 7. That is because in 3 setup, you can survive 1 machine going down at a time. In a 5 setup, you can survive 2 going down. In the 7 setup, you can survive 3 going down. Keep in mind that we offer the opportunity to do 3, 5, or 7, but I have not seen any scenario yet where you would need to do more than 3 servers. We will have a conversation with you if the question arises, should you do more or less? The 5 or 7 or even larger than that allows for more resiliency, but spinning up a new fabric server and having it replicating data is really, really fast and easy to do. So it doesn't take you long to restore operations, even in a 3-node scenario. And if it's just downtime because of disconnectivity, well, then systems replicate. We have a really good guide of how you survive different types of crashes with these different roles and different deployment scenarios, and I'll get back to where you can actually find that today. So you need 1 director console and 1 API server if you need it, and these are low impact systems, so it should not be a concern to deploy these machines. We have sizing guides available for you as we speak. So the management console provides health of the estate, configuration overviews, you can provision new machines, you can provide updates, and it is built on the fabric environment. I think we've covered that already. The search master is the way you can look into all of the different machines. It handles impersonation, role-based access control, and full traceability on who is doing what, both on the search master, but also out on the distributed LogPoints. So when I sit at my search head in my organization, I can see that someone from the search master has been doing stuff, and I can see that it came from the search master and who it was on the search master that actually did it. In addition to that, the data always stays in the local LogPoint pool, even though it is connected to the search master. This means that you only view the data in the MSSP. It is effectively what we phrase as a heavy LogPoint browser that gets a view into the data. So it's not because you need to transfer all of the alerts, you don't need to transfer logs out of the environment, but you give an easy way for the central operations, security operations team to get a view into what is going on in the environment. So I think this is more or less just because we want to pat ourselves on the back. Gartner is doing something they call peer insights. And peer insights right now, LogPoint is actually, let me just get that one out of the way. LogPoint is actually tracking pretty well. So based on the number of the rating and the number of reviews, LogPoint is actually looking pretty good. And if you take the different areas that Gartner goes in and evaluates on every single dimension measured, LogPoint is on par or better than our competition. So for all of you participating that has evaluated us, thank you so much. For those of you who might be in the business of also selling or working with LogPoint, this does provide evidence that we do have a relatively strong product if you ask the people that actually work with it. And even towards Gartner, it came as a surprise to them that we had the rating as we did, because they truthfully told most of them at Gartner haven't never heard of LogPoint, so why were we suddenly at the top? So when is 6.0 coming out? Well, in a little under a week, so on Monday next week, we will be launching 6.0 in Director at the Gartner Security Summit in Washington. So that is when this will be available. You can prepare today. So on the LogPoint Help Center, on the product, there are getting started guides, videos, manuals, and we're continuously updating the flow and content and quality of the content, but you have it available now if you go in and have a look to actually see what's going on. Let's see. So we want to offer an ability for you to get the beta ISO for 6.0 in Director now. It will be pending an approval from LogPoint HQ, but we want to be able to invite select customers and partners to participate for this. And to be considered for a beta ISO deployment, drop me an email, ch@logpoint.com, and I will be happy to work with you in that process. So I know we have allocated an hour for this. I know how busy all of you are, so I'm not going to be spending much more time than necessary. So if we have anything in terms of questions or something like that, please feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, yeah, we are really looking forward to the launch. We are really looking forward to getting the feedback from the beta program as well. So, questions, anyone? The presentation, yes, I will make sure that you will get a copy of the presentation afterwards. So everyone participating now will get a copy of the presentation. Upgrading a 5.6 to the new file system is unfortunately not going to be very easy. We have full support for backup of a 5.6, restore on a 6.0. So that is going to be fully supported. You can also copy the configuration of a 5.6 to a 6.0, get all of the data flowing in like that, and then copying the data from the old one. So either, it depends on how much downtime you want effectively, either you do the complete downtime, backup, install, restore, upgrade, you copy or you copy the configuration over, run on the new one, and migrate the data as you go along. So there are these two options available for the upgrade path. In terms of a new customer, I would recommend 6.0 after we release it, definitely. Most of all because you will be running on the correct, or you'll be running on the improved file system, so you will be on the right feature branch, so to speak. But of course, we will still support the 5.6 moving forward with the old file system. But yeah, I would recommend going to 6.0. There is, I think, in general, we have closed well over 300 bugs. We have created a lot of smaller feature requests. A lot of that I have not even covered in the presentation today. You can find that on the Help Center as well. A lot of the smaller features. There's a lot of general performance improvements. There is the new file system, there is the new operating system, and better hardware support. So performance in general is going to be much better on 6.0. So definitely I would go for 6.0. Okay. So there is a connection about the Azure stuff. And Klaus asked, how about the connection? Do we still have to program for the API? Klaus, I'm not completely sure I understand the question. Is this relating to collecting data that is in the Azure, or is it about running LogPoint in Azure? I think while Klaus answers, no, it's about getting logs from Azure into LogPoint. Okay, so this question is a really good one because it is something I have not touched on at all in the presentation, and I've not gone into anything in regards to roadmap and where the product is headed after 6.0. It warrants a complete hour in and of itself. But what we have been doing and what we've been working on is creating a good framework for fetching logs out from a RESTful API. This framework has been done in our core development team, and it is now being transferred to our KB team, which most of you probably are familiar with, that can actually deliver these kinds of integrations really, really fast. So it will be a plugin to do it. Right now, you still need to do it manually, but immediately following the 6.0 release, we will start pushing a lot more of these API-based features. The first one that will come out is going to be for Office 365. Immediately following that, it will be for a Cisco component. I think it's called ScanSafe. And after that, we'll be pushing for the Azure and AWS infrastructure logs. There is a question from John in regards to API to connect to dashboard products like Tableau. I am not completely sure how the Tableau integrations work, what offerings Tableau has, but today the search API is there, meaning you can actually connect Tableau to the analytics in LogPoint in either a consolidated and aggregated form or the raw messages itself. So that is still going to be there. And I think this would allow you to connect to an existing visualization framework if needed. That is going to be there, yes, and is still there today. So if we don't have any other questions there was one. Victor asked in regards to disk management, if you expand or add a disk, you can initiate a rescan via the GUI and do the expanding of the volume without needing a reboot. So I think the question is how much can be done from the GUI. And right now, it will not be any of it. I thought it was really important for us to push the new disk capabilities without having to wait for the GUI. So we made sure we got it in 6.0. That I said, okay, well, we'll skip on the GUI to begin with, since at least the way I see it, and maybe this is a good time to ask for actual feedback from the market, the disk management is not something you do very often. So at least for the most part, it is okay to do it via the command line, at least initially. We will be doing it via the GUI. Snapshots can be done via the GUI today, but in terms of the disk management and the ZFS pools, these kinds of things, that needs to be done from the command line. So I see we actually already lost a couple of participants, which is really a shame for them, because there is the famous one more thing that we will be talking about, and that is, let's see, that we will be introducing what is called UEBA Lite. So we know with our insight into the market that there is right now a battle going on between the UEBA vendors and the SIM vendors, and a lot of the analysts out there say, well, SIMs are too slow, they can't do UEBA, you need a separate product for it, and then UEBA can add as a source of logs for the SIM. Well, I think there is a merit to that statement. But what we're doing is building a machine learning / classifier to actually do complex clustering of 4-dimensional data. And it sounds really advanced, but it's not. So it could be user action time and document, or put in more, humanly understandable terms, it could be doctor reads medical journal now. So what we will be able to do is say, okay, based on these 4 dimensions of data, we can see how is this doctor performing his actions on the medical records versus his peers, so other doctors in the same type of job, every other medical professional in the department, and enterprise-wide. So this will be used to take the behavioral analytics and do that in a more clever way. So how will we do it? Well, it's going to be done on a separate machine. So we will introduce a new machine that will have a stream of key value pairs sent to it. So we leverage the taxonomy, the normalization, the language we have for representing objects, the type we have, so we know what an IP address is, we know what these different areas are, and then we put it in for analytics. The output of the UEBA Lite engine will be a alert to LogPoint saying you need to look for these records, and you need to look for either this document or this user because something out of the ordinary happened, and we will apply that with some advanced visualization. So this is going to be the start, and it has been part of the roadmap for a long time. We want to do it. It is going to be in production at a customer in 2 to 3 months. It is under active investment in research and development in our team right now, and we will be going to market with this before Christmas this year. So it is just a tiny sneak peek on what is to come. So we've been talking about streaming analytics, doing much more advanced processing of data for a long time in LogPoint. And I just need to say that the architecture is in place, the development has started, and we have something that is running in a POC right now, and it's going to be running in production in a couple of months. We want to mature it in that deployment before we go to market. So with that being said, I would like to conclude for today. I hope you found it beneficial and valuable. And please shoot me an email. Please go in and have a look at the content. Familiarize yourself with what's to come. And I look forward to working with you on everything on 6.0 when we release on Monday at the Gartner event in Washington. So thanks, everyone. And I wish you a great day.